For every application you guys would deploy at work, there is always data migration. Because think about it, when your developer writes the code for your application, they write the code, there's also code for the database, which is the SQL script. The SQL script is there for the application, right? But when you guys launch a brand new RDS instance, it is a brand new RDS instance. AWS does not know what the SQL script for your application looks like. So you would have to migrate the SQL script for your application into the RDS database. This is for any new application you guys are deploying in AWS. You would 95% of the time would have to migrate the data for the application. So which is why I've also included that in the project for you to be able to learn how to migrate any data into an RDS database. And I'll be updating the course as we proceed, because with AWS releasing the EC2 Instance Connect Endpoint, which allows you to connect to any resource in your private subnet, it just even makes the data migration very easy. And I want to show you guys how you can migrate your data into your RDS database using the EC2 Instance Connect Endpoint. For those of you that have completed the project, you guys noticed that we were using MySQL Workbench, and this one just even makes this step a little bit simpler, where we don't have to do the MySQL Workbench and all that stuff. So I want to present that to you guys as something to keep in mind when you get to this step where it says migrate your data into the RDS database. You can go back to reference this demo and use it to migrate your data into your RDS database. And even for the Terraform project, when we start the Terraform project, you guys will create all your resources, and at the end, you will still have to migrate your data. You can use the same process to migrate your data. Okay, so to migrate your SQL script into the RDS instance in the private subnet using the EC2 Instance Connect Endpoint, first, you have to create your VPC. So here, we have a VPC with public and private subnet. Another thing we have done is we have created the NAT gateways in the VPC, because the resources in the private subnet, we want them to have access to the internet. And the way the resources in the private subnet are able to have access to the internet is by using the NAT gateway. So as a prerequisite, before you start, make sure you have a VPC with public and private subnets. You've set up the routing tables for your VPC, and you also have NAT gateways in your VPC. So how we are going to migrate the data into our RDS instance is we will launch an EC2 instance in our private subnet. This is just any EC2 instance. Once we launch the EC2 instance in the private subnet, we will use the EC2 Instance Connect Endpoint to SSH into that EC2 instance. And once we have SSH into that EC2 instance, we can now run the migration from this EC2 instance to the RDS. This is the solution I came up with. There might be a better one, but for now, this is the solution I came up with. Once you've set everything up, it is very easy to migrate your data into the RDS database. Another thing we're also using here is we have to make sure we set our security group correctly between the EC2 Instance Connect Endpoint, the EC2 instance, and the RDS. We would also upload our SQL script into the S3 bucket so that our EC2 instance can download it. And I'll show you that when we do the demo. Okay, so to start, the first thing we need to do is create an S3 bucket and upload our SQL script into it. When you are working on this project, as part of your reference architecture, you already have an S3 bucket in your AWS account, but this is a separate S3 bucket just to migrate your data into the RDS database. So I'm going to come to the console and I'm going to type S3 here. Then I'm going to click Create Bucket. I'll give the bucket a name. Once I give the bucket a name, I'm going to scroll down and create the bucket. Once you create the bucket, go into the bucket, and we are going to upload the script we would migrate into our database. The script we are going to migrate into our database is just a SQL script. It is this file that I'm going to provide to you. And we will use Flyway to migrate the data into the RDS database. So the script we want Flyway to migrate for us is this SQL script that our developer created with our application. This is the script that I said the developer created with the application that you must migrate into your RDS database. Once you've created the S3 bucket, this is the script. I'm going to select the script and drag and drop it here. I've dropped the script in the S3 bucket I just created. You can see it here. I'm going to scroll down and click upload. That's the first thing we are going to do, create an S3 bucket and upload our script into it. The next thing we have to do is create an IAM role to allow the EC2 instance to download the script from the S3 bucket. So here, we've created the S3 bucket, we upload our script into it. When we launch this EC2 instance has to be able to download the script from the S3 bucket. So that is why we are creating an IAM role that will allow the EC2 instance to download the script from the S3 bucket. Here, you guys already have that role in your account from the previous project you did, but I'm just showing you this end-to-end again, showing you how to create the IAM role. To create an IAM role, we are going to type IAM in the search box, select IAM under services. We are going to click roles, then click create role. So under trusted entity type, it is going to be AWS service. And under use case, we are going to select EC2. Then scroll down and click next. Then on this page, we are going to select the policy we want to attach to the EC2 instance. We want the EC2 instance to be able to download files from our S3 bucket. So here we can type S3 and press enter. And under your search results, we can give it the Amazon S3 full access. I'm going to select it by checking that box, then scroll down and click next. On this page, we are going to give the IAM role a name. I'll call it Data Migrate role. Once you give the role a name, this is the permission we added to the role. Scroll down and click create role. And there you go. It has created the IAM role. To see the IAM role I just created, if I type the name for the Data Migrate role, it is here. That's the next thing we need to do. Then the next thing we are going to do is create the security groups. Remember what I said, in order for you to be able to SSH into the EC2 instance you will launch in your private subnet, and in order for this EC2 instance to have access to the RDS instance, you have to control that traffic with security group, which on the security group for each resource, you have to allow the necessary ports that will allow you to connect to it. So that is why we are creating our security group. And these are the security groups we will create. We will create a security group for the endpoint. We will create a security group for the EC2 instance. Let me show you on the reference architecture. We will create a security group for the endpoint, the EC2 instance, and the RDS. So in our management console, I'm going to type VPC in the search box and select VPC under services. On the VPC dashboard here, first I'm going to filter by my VPC. Make sure the VPC you are creating the security group in is the VPC you have created that has public and private subnets. Once you've selected your VPC, I'm going to scroll down here. Under security, I'll select security groups, and I'm going to click create security group. I'll give the first security group a name, and this is the security group we will add to the EC2 Instance Connect Endpoint. For this security group, I'm going to call the security group EICE SG. Then I'm going to copy the name and add it as the description. Under VPC, click this X to remove it and select your VPC. The VPC that I created that has public and private subnet is this dev VPC. I'll select it. Then scroll down. Under inbound rule for the EC2 Instance Connect Endpoint, we don't need to add any inbound rule according to the AWS documentation. And we also saw this when we did the demo on the EC2 Instance Connect Endpoint. For the EC2 Instance Connect Endpoint, what we need to add is an outbound rule. Since we will use the EC2 Instance Connect Endpoint to SSH into our EC2 instance in the private subnet, then here we are going to allow SSH on the outbound on port 22. So for the outbound, select this dropdown and select SSH. SSH is on port 22. And for the destination, we are going to remove this 0.0. This means anyway, we are going to remove this. And we are going to limit the destination to our VPC CIDR block. That is because the EC2 Instance Connect Endpoint, I should have the endpoint here. I'll update the reference architecture. But the EC2 Instance Connect Endpoint is going to be in our VPC. And when we use it, it is going to be initiating the traffic from within our VPC. That is why we have just the outbound rule. And we want to limit the destination to our VPC CIDR. So I'm going to open a new console here and copy my VPC CIDR. This is the VPC I'm using. The CIDR block is 10.0.0.0/16. I'm going to select it, copy it, and go back here. And for the destination, I'm going to paste it there. This is exactly what you guys would do when you get to that step of migrating your data into the RDS database. This is one option you can use. If you like MySQL Workbench, you can use MySQL Workbench too. But just understand that with that, you have to use SSH keys and all that stuff. But in this project, we are not using SSH keys. We'll be using the EC2 Instance Connect Endpoint to connect to our EC2 instances and resources in the private subnet. So that is why using MySQL Workbench would work, but you would have to go the route to set it up. But the way we've set up this project, we've set it up not to use MySQL Workbench or SSH keys. So for the security group for the endpoint, this is all we need to add: SSH port 22, and the destination is going to be the CIDR block of our VPC. Scroll down and click Create Security Group. Once you create that security group, I'm going to select Security Group here again. Then I'll click Create Security Group again. The next security group I'm going to create will be the security group we will add to the EC2 instance. And for this security group, I'll call it Server SG. Then I'm going to copy the name, paste it here. Then for the VPC, I'm going to remove that, select the right VPC. Under inbound rule, I'm going to click Add Rule. And for this security group, we are going to open port 22. So here, select this dropdown and select SSH. And for the source is going to be the EC2 Instance Connect Endpoint. Because remember, the EC2 Instance Connect Endpoint is what we will use to SSH into our EC2 instance. So we need to open the security group on this EC2 instance to allow traffic from the EC2 Instance Connect Endpoint on port 22. That is what we are doing here. So we've had SSH on port 22. For the source, we will select in here and scroll down to security group section and look for the security group we created, which we call EC2 instance, which we called EICE-SG. This is it. I'm going to select it and scroll down here and click Create Security Group. We've created the second security group. Remember, on that security group, this is the security group we will add to the web server. We open SSH port 22, and we are allowing traffic from the endpoint security group. Then the last security group we are going to create is the security group we will add to the RDS database. Here, I'm going to scroll up and select security groups, then click Create Security Group. I'm going to give it a name, then select it, copy it. I'm going to paste it here. Make sure you put it in the right VPC. Then under inbound rule, we are going to add rule, and we are going to add rule on MySQL and Aurora. So look for that, which is here. That is always on 3306. And the source, according to our reference architecture, this RDS instance will be allowing traffic on 3306 from the EC2 instance. So here we have to select this drop down, scroll down to the security group section, and find the Server SG security group we created. That is how you allow traffic from that EC2 instance. Then scroll down and click Create Security Group. Those are the security groups we need to create. The next thing we are going to do is create our RDS instance. So this RDS instance. Here and type RDS and select RDS. On the RDS dashboard, click Create Database. Then here we are creating a MySQL database engine. Select it, scroll down. We are going to use the MySQL community, and under the version for the application we need to use is version 8. So here, when you select MySQL, you can select whatever latest version of version 8 you see here. The latest one I'm seeing is 8.0.33. Select that one. Then scroll down. Under templates, we can use free tier and scroll down. Remember that when you are using free tier, you won't get the option for creating a multi-AZ DB cluster and all that stuff. We don't need it for this. We just need a single database. Then here, this is the database instance identifier. So for the database instance identifier, I'll call it DB. I'll just call it RP. Under master username, I'll give the database a name. Then under password, I'm going to create a password. Then I'll confirm the password. Then scroll down. Under the database instance class, we can check this button to use the previous generation. So that way you get the DBT2 micro. That is fine. Then storage, we will leave all these options as default. And connectivity, we would leave all these options as default. Then under VPC, we'll select this dropdown and select the VPC we want to create it in. Then subnet group, it is going to create a subnet group for us. That's fine. Then here, public access, we'll leave all these other options as default. Under security group, we are going to choose an existing security group, remove this default one, and select database SG I created. Then click out. Availability zone, we will just leave that as default and scroll down here. Keep scrolling down. Under additional configuration here, select this drop down and give your database a name. Once you've given your database a name, scroll down, and that's all we need to do. And I'm just going to click create database. I think I might have, okay. Okay, I guess I can have that. So I'll just call it appdb like that. All right, so I am creating the database, which is this one. And when you create your database, if you want to see your information, it is here, your username and password. This is what I created. I'll just copy this so I don't forget. While you are creating the RDS database, the next thing we are going to create is the EC2 Instance Connect Endpoint. We'll create it in our VPC. On my reference architecture, I should have the EC2 Instance Connect Endpoint here. You can create it anywhere in your private subnet. It doesn't matter. So we can create it here. We can create it here. We can create it here. But I'll create it in any of these subnets in my VPC. Then the last thing we'll do is launch the EC2 instance, and we should be able to migrate our data. I'm going to go back to the management console and I'll type VPC again. Select VPC under services. And on the left side, under the VPC dashboard, scroll down and select endpoints here. Then we are going to click create endpoint. We'll give the endpoint a name. Under service category, it is going to be an EC2 Instance Connect Endpoint. Select that. Then under VPC, we will select this drop down and select our VPC. Scroll down. For the security group, we are going to select the security group we created for this endpoint, which is this one. So make sure you check the box for the security group you created for the endpoint. Scroll down. Under subnet, we are going to select this drop down, and this is how you pick which subnet in your VPC you want to create it. You want to create the endpoint, whether it is any of these subnets, but make sure it is your private subnets. I'm going to select this drop down and I'll select my private app subnet AZ1. Once you select your subnet, click create endpoint. That is all you need to do to create the endpoint. The last thing we have to do is create this EC2 instance that we will use to migrate the data into the RDS instance. So here, I'm going to go in the management console and type EC2 under services and select EC2. Then I'm going to click launch instance and launch instance again. I'm going to give the instance a name. I'll call it data migrate instance. Once you give the EC2 instance a name, scroll down. Under AMI, we are going to use Amazon Linux. And to migrate our data, make sure you use the Amazon Linux 2023 AMI. Then here, under instance type, it is going to be T2 micro. Since we are using the endpoint to connect to our EC2 instance, we don't need a key pair. So here, I'm going to click proceed without a key pair. Then scroll down here. Under network settings, I'm going to click edit, select my VPC. Then select the subnet I want to launch the EC2 instance in. It doesn't matter which subnet in your private subnet you launch the EC2 instance. So I'm going to pick the private app subnet AZ1. Then under firewall security group, we will choose an existing security group. Scroll down and look for the security group you created for the EC2 instance. I called it server SG. I'm going to select it. Then scroll down here. Under advanced details, we are going to select this drop down. And remember, we need to add the IAM role that will allow the EC2 instance to download the script from the S3 bucket. So under instance profile here, select this drop down and you can see the DB migrate role I created. I'm going to select it. And that is all I need to do here. And I'm going to click launch instance. I've launched the EC2 instance. I'll click here to go into the EC2 instance. That is all we need to do in terms of setup. So I'm going to wait for the EC2 instance to run. And also I will verify that my RDS instance is running. Yeah, so this is the RDS instance I created. It is available. And also, I would also verify that the endpoint is available. So the endpoint is still pending. I'll wait for the endpoint to be created. Once the status of the endpoint is available, then we can use it to SSH into our EC2 instance. Does anyone have any questions while we are waiting for the endpoint to be available?
So I have a quick, okay, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
The question is, what script is it are we going to write to migrate this, to migrate the resources into the
Yeah, that will be the next thing we work on. That will be the next thing we work on. That's a good question. That'll be the next thing we work on, but I guess I don't have to wait for this. We can just start writing the script. So again, that's what I'm saying. Like when you guys are working as a cloud engineer and you are coming up with these things, you will notice everything is piece by piece. Even for me, I just don't write the script just like that. So when you guys see me give you like a full command, trust me, I didn't write that full command just by sitting there and typing away. I had to like do it one by one. And by getting each command, that is what turns into a full script. So we said that a good tool you can use to migrate your data into the RDS database is Flyway. It is a tool that I've used at work to migrate data for many applications. So here, this is how it works. We are going to type Flyway, download. When I type Flyway download, you can see download Flyway here. I'll select it, and that will bring me to the documentation. To download Flyway, in their previous documentation, this is the command they gave you. So this wget command, which you just use it to download the file from the internet. So that's the command I will provide to you guys to use. My EC2 instance should be up and running now. And let me check my endpoint. Okay, my endpoint is available. So this is what I will do. I'm going to open my terminal. Then I will SSH into my EC2 instance. This is the CLI command to use the EC2 Instance Connect Endpoint to SSH into your EC2 instance. So it is AWS EC2 Instance Connect SSH. Then you specify the instance ID. So here I'm going to remove this and copy the ID of my new EC2 instance. Once I add that, I'm going to press enter. I'll give it some time to load. The first time it loads, it will ask you this question, type yes, and press enter. So I have SSH into that EC2 instance. So once you SSH into your EC2 instance, the next thing we are going to do is download Flyway on the EC2 instance. Like I said, when I reference their documentation, this is the command you can use to download Flyway version 9.20.0. So I'll give you guys this command too. So I'll copy this command. And it's always good to update your EC2 instance the first time you log in. Like as you can see now, there is nothing to update. Everything is complete. Once you update your EC2 instance, then the next thing we need to do is download Flyway. So that is that first command. Thank you, Adewale. I think Adewale found the documentation. Thank you. So this is the link to the documentation. You guys can copy it, and I also copy it and paste it here. You can see here to download Flyway on a Linux computer. This is the command you have to run. And now they are on version 9.20.1. But when I just did it a couple of days ago, they were on 9.0.2. So I'll stick with the one that I already tried that works. So I'm downloading the 9.20.0. So you guys can see this command that I'm about to run, I got it straight from their documentation. So I'll paste that command in there. See, it is downloading Flyway. It has successfully downloaded. Once you download it, now if you type ls, you will see a Flyway folder in there. If you read their documentation, this is the standard that Flyway has specified to migrate your data. It is always download the zip file, unzip it, but that command I just run did everything for me. It downloaded their zip file, unzip it. That's why you are seeing the unzip version here. And anytime you download Flyway, this is what you will see. You will see Flyway hyphen the version of Flyway you downloaded. It is always the same. The next thing you need to do is go into the directory of the Flyway that you see. Remember, I downloaded it, I type ls. Now I need to go into this directory. So I'm going to type cd flyway, then press enter. Now I am in that directory. If I type ls again, you can see all the assets in this directory. For the assets in this directory, you don't need to do anything here. The only thing you need to do is in this SQL directory here, this is where you will add the SQL script you want to migrate. So remember that SQL script I uploaded into my S3 bucket? Flyway wants you to add that SQL script in this SQL directory. So when we run our Flyway migrate command, Flyway will go into this directory, find the script we want to migrate and migrate it for us. So what I'm doing is when you go into this directory, so for example, if I cd into the SQL directory, do cd SQL and ls, Flyway always have some text file in there just telling you what to do. Put your SQL migration here, right? So this is what I just mentioned, that you need to put your script in this directory. So here, I'm going to cd back to my previous directory. So I am in my Flyway 9.20.0, right? In order to run the Flyway command, you must be in the Flyway directory. So in this directory, what I'm doing is I'm just going to delete their own SQL directory here, because when you download it, there's always something that comes in it. So I'm just going to delete that directory and create my own. So here, I'm going to type rm -rf and SQL. So I'm saying I want to delete this directory. Press enter. Now, if I type ls, that SQL directory is gone. Then I'm going to recreate that directory by typing mkdir. This is the command to make a directory, which is equivalent to making a folder on your EC2 instance. So I'm going to type mkdir SQL and press enter. And now if I type ls, you can see I've created that directory again. The only difference is now if I go into that directory, cd SQL, I don't have anything in there. That is the reason why I deleted the one Flyway has, just to remove whatever they have in there here. So I'm going to cd back into my Flyway directory. So I know I'm doing a lot of back and forth here just to show you guys what's going on. But as you are doing all these things, you can type history here. Once you type history, you can see here, we downloaded Flyway. Then the two important thing I did is I cd into the Flyway directory. So here, what we can even do is copy this and in your command here, paste it here. I downloaded Flyway. It created this directory. I cd'd into it. I ls here. I don't need that. I cd there just to show you guys. So these ones I don't need. The main one I need is I removed the SQL directory. I need that. And I created another one. So this is how I come up with my script, by testing it one by one. So far, this is my script, what I've done. So now that I've created my directory, the next thing I need to do is copy the SQL file from my S3 bucket into the SQL directory that Flyway wants me to put my script in. The command to copy a file from S3 is AWS S3 copy. And if you Google it or use ChatGPT, you'll find this command. It is AWS S3 copy. Then let's go to our S3 console. Here, I'm going to type S3 and select S3 under services. Then I'm going to select the bucket. I think I call it data migrate, AWS data migrate bucket, right? So when you come in the S3 bucket that your script is in, select the script and it is the URI, you see, yeah? So click this box to copy it. And that is how we get this first part. After you type S3 CP, the URI of the file you want to copy. And here is the destination where you want to copy it to. And how you get this destination is on your EC2 instance. Remember, let me clear my screen so you can see. Remember, I am in the Flyway directory. In the Flyway directory, if you type ls, you will see all the files in it and folder. We said in this directory, we need to put our script in the SQL directory. So here, if I cd into the SQL, press enter. Now I am in the SQL directory. Once you are in the SQL directory, if you want to get the full path to the SQL directory, type pwd. That will give you the full path. This is the easiest way I get it. So I'll select it, copy it, and that is how I come up with this one. So we are running an S3 CP command. It would copy the file from the S3 bucket and it would put it in this directory on the EC2 instance. So I'm going to copy this, and it doesn't matter what directory you run it from, that command, but remember when we run our Flyway migrate, we need to be in the Flyway directory, not the SQL directory. So here I'm just going to cd back into my Flyway directory. If you type cd ... it will bring you back to the previous directory you were in. Now you can see I'm in my Flyway directory. So I'll run that command from there. Then once you paste your command, press enter. Now it has downloaded the SQL script from my S3 bucket into this directory, because that is what we specified in our command. So again, if I ls in my Flyway directory, this is my SQL directory. If I go into it by typing cd SQL and ls, you can see my script is in there. Once you've copied your script into the SQL directory, remember so far all we did is, if we review our command, we download Flyway, then we cd into the folder, the Flyway folder. It is up to you however you want to copy your script into the SQL. For me, I removed whatever SQL directory they had and I created a new one. Then I copied my script into that directory. So far, that is what we've done. Then the next thing we have to do is run our Flyway migrate command. And this is the Flyway migrate command. I'll provide this command to you. In this command, the only thing we have to change here is here. I'm going to add something here so you can see. Here, we have to add the endpoint of our RDS instance that we want to connect to. Here, we have to add the name of the database we want to connect to. Here, we have to add the username of our RDS database. Here, we have to add the password, and these other two will leave them as the default. So this location is where your script is located, and our script is located in the SQL directory. So for this, I'm going to copy the endpoint of my RDS instance. I'll go to the management console. I already have the RDS database open here. I'll go to the RDS database. This is my RDS database. Once you select it, again, once you come to the RDS dashboard, select database instance, select your database, and here you see the endpoint, select it and copy it. And for this first part, I'm going to replace here up to the .com, paste it there. Then the next thing I need to enter is the name of my database. So I'm going to go back to the RDS console. To get the name of your database, please note that it is not the instance identifier name. It is the name of your database, which you will find under configuration. And here, under DB name, this is the name of the database. We are going to copy it. Once we copy it, we'll replace this. And this Flyway migrate command came straight from the Flyway documentation. I will include all the links for you guys so you can see where this command came from. So we have update our RDS endpoint, our database name. Then we need to add our database username. Remember, I called my username this. And we also need to update our password. And here, this is also what I called my password. And we leave this other two as default. Our SQL script is in the SQL directory, and the command we want to run is migrate. So this is how you will update this Flyway command. Once you update it, I'm going to copy it. And before you run it here, right now I am in this SQL directory. I need to cd back into the Flyway directory. You must be in the Flyway whatever version you downloaded to run the Flyway migrate command, not in the SQL directory. So please remember that. Once you are in the Flyway directory, paste your command and run it. Press enter. You can see it is now migrating the data. And there you go. It has successfully migrated the data into the database AppDB, and now it is on version 1. So when you get to this dynamic assignment and the part where you have to migrate your data into the RDS database, this is the process you'll use. Do you guys have any question on this? Do you guys like this process, or do you prefer the MySQL Workbench method we've been using before?
Hey, Aziz, I do have a question real quick.
Yeah.
When you downloaded and installed Flyway, and when you installed Flyway and you deleted SQL, why did you delete it?
I deleted it because I don't want you guys to run into an issue when you are running your script. Let me go back here. I think I cleared it.
Yeah, I remember you deleted it and then reinstalled.
Oh yeah, there's no way for us to say I can't go back. The reason why I deleted it is because when you download Flyway and you unzip it, in their own directory that comes in there, they have like a text file in it.
Okay, so why don't you just simply delete the text file rather than
you can do that too.
Okay.
It is whatever method you want to use. You can delete the text file. Yes, you can run the command to delete the text file, but what if they change the name of that text file in the future and you need to run this script in your CI/CD?
Maybe we can have a hide file, some hide file, and then it will cause problem. It is good to delete and then come back and create it again.
Exactly. Because the reason why I deleted it is because here I'm just only showing you how to run the commands one by one to show you how I come up with the script, right? So that is why I was able to go into that directory and I saw the name that they are calling the sample script they put in there. So let's say this command, you've included it, this script, you've included it in your CI/CD pipeline to run it for you. You are not going to be there when the script run. What if Flyway in the future, you guys saw last week, I was just there, their documentation page was somewhere. This week I went back, is in another place. What if Flyway, this SQL directory will always be there. But let's say now in this SQL directory, the file you said I should delete is called my SQL file, right? But what if in the future Flyway now change it to my SQL data file? Then your pipeline is going to fail because by the time you run that command, it is not going to find it. So without me not having to worry about whatever name they have called, whatever file they've put in that directory, I just delete the entire directory and recreate my own.
Gotcha.
Yeah.